Hello and welcome to Views on News. I am Jawad. Tehami. In today's program, we are going to understand as to what the foreign policy of the new US President Donald Trump is and where the world is going to head with this new presidency in the United States of America. Given the fact I'll be talking about a number of statements he has made on different fronts. He had a very fiery call with the Danish Prime Minister regarding the takeover of Greenland. He has also talked of Canada to become the 51st state of the United States of America. And also he has talked of taking over the Panama Canal. He's also come up with the idea of the resettlement of Palestinian refugees in Jordan and Egypt. He has also threatened Colombia, which happens to be one of the closest US allies in Latin America, with 25% tariffs, a travel ban and visa cancellations on Colombian officials. He's also threatened Russian President Vladimir Putin with more sanctions if he refuses to end the war in Ukraine. He has also called upon China to intervene and play its role in resolving the conflict in Ukraine. His administration has also halted all the foreign aid except for Israel and Egypt. He's issued also a defense spending target for the NATO countries and also has hinted at imposing tariffs on the European Union products. What are going to be the implications of all these, and what do we understand of this particular pattern by these statements and the talk by the US President on all of these fronts? For that, we are honored to be joined in the studio by Dr. Zafar Nawaz Jaspal, foreign affairs expert. Dr. Jaspal, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. Later on in the show, we'll be joined by other participants. As they join in, I'll be introducing them. Dr. Jaspal, now let's start with the overall understanding of yours regarding this particular pattern. We have seen very fiery statements, very hard talk coming on the part of the US President during the pre-election, after his election victory, and after taking over the White House as well. What do we understand? What does this pattern actually allude to as far as the foreign policy of the new US President is concerned?
As you have rightly identified a number of the issues, if you try to examine one by one all these issues, one can find, yes, Trump's foreign and domestic policy, especially foreign policy, is very much grounded on the concept of transactional rather than relationship. That is understandable. What he was saying during the election campaign and what he said in his inaugural addresses, I mean on 20th January and onward, I find that there was a lot of contradiction. Contradictions in his statement, contradictions in his actions, and contradictions in understanding the trends in the global politics. I think that President Trump and his advisors are failing to realize that today we are living in a multipolar world, and in this multipolar world there are two other major powers, and those two major powers, like Russia, Americans have to contest with them in the European setting, and China, especially in Asia Pacific and then in the world as well. Besides that, the states which they think that they had invested, especially during the previous, you can say, tenure of the Trump in India, India is in a different mood. And they are investing too much on India, but India is not ready to be putting all its eggs this time in the Trump's basket, because if you see, in October they signed an agreement, and today India's senior diplomat is sitting in Beijing and negotiating how to increase the trade between China and India. Having said this, what we find it, I think that the Trump statements and actions have confused both close allies and neighbors. Let me start with the neighbors, with the Panama. I was seeing that even if in a 1 year calculation, what the cost they are paying, it is 0.00 something, but he's thinking to take over the Panama Canal, which was given to the, what you call it, Panama, a quarter years back, 25, 30 years back, in 1999. And are they able to manage it? And there will be many challenges. So that is not workable.
That's not workable.
Or even if it is workable, it will be creating a lot of, you can say, disturbance or anxiety in the neighboring states. You said that it is going to annex as a 51 state of Canada, and Canadians' reaction was very obvious. Then now after coming into power, he didn't say much on it. Changing the name from the Gulf of Mexico to Gulf of America, it satisfied the nationalists, or you can say populists, within the United States. What will be the practical? It will be also annoying the neighbors. Now coming towards the Europe, he made a lot of statements. Is America live without the NATO? NATO is a important, you can say, you can factor or organization in their foreign policy. Without NATO, Americans cannot maintain their control over the Europe or in the Euro-Atlantic domain. And I think he will be going to change. It's very interesting. He made a statement proudly. November election was the cause of ceasefire, which happened one day before on 19th January. But after the ceasefire, what he said? Now he's, you can say, executing the policy of the Israelis, asking the Jordanians and the Egyptians that you can take all the people of the Gaza. It's once again annoying. Yes, he indicated that instead of Britain, he will go to Saudi Arabia, and Saudi Arabia offered $600 million US dollars investment or billions US dollars investment, but he's still living in this hope that Saudis will join the Abraham Accord. But Saudis made very clear that without the clear-cut two-state solution in the Middle East, I mean the Palestine and Israel, they are not ready to move ahead. So what kind of the things you are expecting? You have very rightly pointed out about the Russia. On the Russians, he said, within 24 hours, I will manage the Ukrainian crisis. Now he's saying 5 to 6 months. Let's see how the things will be going to unfold. In the Middle East, his primary desire could be to roll back the Iranian nuclear missile program. But before he took the oath, Iranians signed a strategic partnership, 20-year strategic partnership with Russia. They had already strategic partnership with China. So it's a more, I think his statements and his actions, when you try to critically examine, they create more ambiguity, or you can say create more complexity. And yes, one can understand, as I said in the beginning, if I can go as a student of international politics, that his policies are very much transactional, it gives me the idea. But where the missing element is that he is ignoring the systemic forces of the global politics, especially because of the multipolarity. And if he is not taking into account those forces, I think there will be a big challenge for the Americans. America first sounds good for the Americans, but whether it sounds good or protectionist policies sound good for the other actors in the multipolarity, I think one needs to think over it. So it's not easy job.
Right. Let me bring in another participant into the show, Mr. Anwar Iqbal, senior journalist. He has joined us on the phone line. Mr. Iqbal, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. But looking at the promises, the statements which came during the pre-election phase and after the election victory, and now the statements or ideas which are being proposed by President Donald Trump, do you see contradictions as well? As Dr. Zafar Nawaz Jaspal is of the view there are contradictions in his statements and the actions. How do you look at that?
Well, actually, I do not see contradictions. I mean, right from day one, he was focused on his voters, basically, And who are his voters? His voters are the people who are against immigration, those who want almost all colored immigrants kicked out of the United States. There are people who think the United Nations is a big conspiracy against the United States and that it should be shut down. There are people who think that Americans waste their money when they provide assistance to other countries. They should not. That they should not. That they should even stop U.S. assistance or U.S. support to NATO. So these are the people that he thinks are his vote bank, and that it is because of these people that he is able to control U.S. lawmakers as well. Because if they fear that if this vote bank does not support them, they will lose their elections. And elections for Congress are held every 2 years. So I think he is very much right now. He's very much focused on satisfying his voters, and then probably after a month or two, I mean, as you know, that he suspended all assistance to every country except Israel and Egypt for 90 days. So after this 90-day period, then I think things will cool down, and then he will get into the business of running the United States, of managing U.S. relations with other countries and everything, and then we will see a more normal and seasoned approach. Right now, I think it is all aimed at satisfying his voters.
Right. What do you understand when he talks of taking over Panama Canal as well as talking of Greenland being important for the United States for its economic security? Do these talks of taking over Panama Canal as well as Greenland, they actually indicate of the expansionist policy of the new president in the U.S.?
I don't know if actually these could be implemented, or even if he plans to implement them. I mean, he has been talking about Greenland for quite some time. Greenland has a total population of what, 56, 58,000 people, and it's a huge, the world's probably the largest island. And he wants Greenland. He thinks that it'll be good if for the United States and for Greenland if it becomes a part of the United States. But Greenland is controlled by Denmark, and I did not think.
Right, Mr. Iqbal, please stay with us. We are joined by another participant, Mr. Najmuddin former ambassador to the United States of America. Mr. Sheikh, thank you very much for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. Mr. Sheikh, how do you look at this particular pattern of the statements coming from the new U.S. president? How do you think, what is actually the intention behind these statements?
The intention is very clear. Trump believes that America is self-contained and America will trade on its own terms, will impose tariffs where necessary, but will try and get more and more manufacturing jobs back into the United States. This, of course, does not impact countries like Pakistan, where the value of the goods that we export is very low and therefore is not likely to be affected by the tariffs and by the threats of tariff that Trump has laid. But on the other hand, we must also recognize that Trump is not going to be paying much attention to South Asia because he is focused really on two subjects. One, the migration, and second, that all trade must be transactional. That is, what will you give me in exchange for access to the American market, and how much access will you give me? I think that Pakistan, in that sense, is safe because Pakistan's goods are goods which come into the category where it is unlikely that anybody in America would want to manufacture $5 shirts, for instance, which would be one of our principal exports. Uh, this much having been said, we must also recognize that his attention is going to be largely focused on countries which he thinks are going to be useful to him. And at this particular time, I don't think that South Asia will figure very largely. India will figure because India has a very large number of people who are illegally in the United States, and he intends throwing them out. This is going to happen. I don't think that India will be able to resist the challenge that he poses, and there will be aircraft coming to pick up Indians who are illegally in America and will be sent back to India. Now, this is one aspect that we have to take care of, or we have to take note of. The other is that now with Trump, you are going to find much more focus on the fact that in the Middle East, how much oil is going to be produced and how much oil should he continue to produce. He has made it clear that he is, on the basis of what he has said, that drill, baby, drill, that he intends producing more oil if he can, oil and gas if he can. And if he does this, then he is going to flood the European market with his product if it can be done economically. The question now is whether extracting more oil and gas in America is going to be economic or not. This the companies will have to decide, and I don't think that Trump can influence that particular area, though he might perhaps even give them some subsidies to do so. But essentially, in economic terms, perhaps now the cost of production of oil and gas in America will not come down to the levels that exist in the Gulf countries, particularly.
Right. Mr. Sheikh, you already talked of the two priorities of US President Donald Trump. First being migration, the other one that all trade should be transactional. Now, how does his talk of taking over Greenland and Panama Canal fit into these two top priorities? And do you think that talk could be converted into action also?
Well, I think what is going to happen is that there will be long negotiations with Greenland, and what will happen is that the Denmark will be persuaded that the United States can maintain whatever bases it chooses in Greenland, but will not give up its sovereignty over Denmark easily. On the other hand, Denmark needs America as a trading partner and may find that it has to make concessions. Your mention of the fact that the world is multipolar, I'm afraid I don't agree. I think that right now we are in a stage of unipolarity with the American economy and the American military strength being what uh, it is the dominant power, and Russia and China are way behind in this particular respect. Though the latest advances that China has made in AI, in artificial intelligence, may give Trump pause, but Trump will make arrangements with China. I think he is not going to try and follow the policies of Biden with respect to China, not to regard it as a strategic competitor, but as something as a country with whom he can do some business. I think Rubio, his Secretary of State, has made it clear that he is going to be talking to China, and they will see whether he and Wang Yi, the Chinese foreign minister, can work something out in terms of meeting the interests of both countries.
Right, Mr. Sheikh, please stay with us. Dr. Jaspal, what's your understanding? Let's proceed with this particular talk of how the bilateral relationship between US and China are going to fare under Trump's presidency 2.0. Is he going to continue with that trade and tariff war that he already launched during his first tenure?
I think this time he has to revisit it, as Ambassador Saab very rightly pointed out. If you see that during the election campaign, it was impression that one of his immediate executive orders would be 60% tariff increase or these kind of the things. But the day he was taking inaugural, everywhere it was who were among the invitees list. He invited the President Xi, and his representative was sitting there. So that makes a sense. That gives the idea that he wanted to have a business with the China. Then there was a report that he said that within 100 days I'm planning to visit the China or meet the President Xi. That gives an idea that he understands the limitations of the United States. Despite this, the United States is still far ahead in the economic, technological, military sectors, but they are not ready to, you can say, make or go for a hot war with the China. There is another important point here is, my understanding is that he will try to raise the diplomatic barrier and then go for a compromises because he is very clear as a business. But think for a moment, if we put the tariff on or increase the tariff, China will be also going to do the same thing, and there are many other states which will be going to react. Who will be in an advantageous position? Definitely the American industrialists, but at the same time American consumers, and the American consumers are the voter of the Trump as well. The second is that if they increase, the other sides will go for it could be a counterproductive in this, you can say, globalized world. And in that counterproductivity could be that they will also increase the tariff where the Americans will be going because they are still big industrial might. Now in this context, what my understanding is, with this kind of a rhetoric, he tried to maximize his gains or the American gains in the international setting. But here there is an interesting set. When he was talking about the Canada and the Greenland, yes, Greenland is nearer to the New York than the Denmark. And still there is a big air base of the Americans there, and Greenland is very much part of the Americans' ballistic missile defense systems, you can say interceptors deployment and as well as early radars deployment. It is strategically as well, whereas the minerals are the other side. One understands that Trump is more interested in the mineral resources of the island, but at the same time American strategic community is interested because of these missile deployment. Or if you see, when they transited from the NMD to the BMD, since that time the Greenland is significant. Now here there is a catching phrase which one cannot ignore. He said, for pursuit of these objectives in the neighborhood or with the allies, if there is a need of the use of the force, it could be. Now here what he was saying, I will make America strong again, you can say without fighting a war, but through the peace. Here he is threatening to use the force against the smaller neighbor, against this. Then what is the difference between him and the Putin or the other aggressors like the Modi? Is he going to stand in that line? I think if I can review the Trump's previous government policies and his speeches and whatever he is doing, I think he's not willing. Maybe he made this statement, threatening statement, whether he means it or not. Similarly, on the tariff towards with the China, what he means, I think
it's just to take the leverage.
Yeah,
okay. So when we specifically talk about the strategic importance and the importance in terms of the availability of the minerals, oil and gas as well over there, Ambassador Sheikh already alluded to the fact that during his inaugural address, he had talked of going for drilling and baby drilling.
Ambassador is very rightly referred it. If you see in his speeches, he said he's going to impose energy emergency, and within that he exited or is going to exit from the Paris Agreement of climate change. And if he were, what is his plan is to shift more focus on the fossil fuels, where the gas and oil comes, and America is rich in that.
So do we understand that when he talks of taking over Greenland, he's more interested by looking at that particular statement that Greenland is important for the US for economic security? Do we understand that his eyes on Greenland are for the fact that it is rich in mineral resources?
I do agree with you that Trump definitely is looking
at that. Baby drilling is going to perhaps initiate from there.
That natural resources could be, but at the same time, Greenland is important for military purposes as well.